Good evening. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Gadi Schwartz coming to you from Los Angeles. And here are the stories we're watching tonight. It seems like we can't catch a break with this extreme weather. This time, it is more deadly tornadoes leveling houses in the Midwest.
I was praying, hoping that we would get through it all right, and everybody else would, because just how strong you could feel the wind against the bathroom wall, it was just unbelievable.
And Donald Trump is facing 34 felony counts related to hush money payments made to a porn star. But why does Stormy Daniels owe Trump over $100,000 in legal fees? Plus, Israeli police clash with worshipers at a mosque in Jerusalem during the Holy Week. And L.A. is hoping to drive crime and those who are homeless out of a subway station with classical music, extremely loud classical music.
I think if they don't want them in the streets, they're not allowed down here. Where are they allowed to go?
And in Baton Rouge, it's all smiles. The LSU NCAA champs take a victory lap around campus. And we start our show tonight with the severe weather happening all around the country. Dangerous storms are putting millions under threat, and we're starting to see footage from today. This possible tornado was captured in Trenton, Illinois. Meanwhile, in southeastern Missouri, at least 5 people are dead after a tornado touched down around 4 a.m. this morning. You can see the path of the destruction left by the twister there in Glen Allen. That's a small village home to less than 100 people who say their town will never be the same.
There's a lot of memories that came from that building right there. A lot of work and hard work, sweat and tears. But yeah, emotionally, it's hard to take.
In other places of Missouri, people saw monster-sized hail come down. Take a look at that. Imagine that pelting down on your house and car. The person who took that said the hail was as big as tennis balls. We've got more on that storm in just a few minutes, but you know we've been covering these tornadoes for weeks now, and it is starting to feel a little bit routine, but we're here to remind you there is nothing normal about this. Listen to this. Since January, there have been over 470 tornado reports. That is double what we normally see at this time of year. There have also been 63 tornado deaths so far, which is close to what we usually see in an entire year. And we're not done yet. A number of communities are under severe weather threat as we speak. Joining us now is NBC meteorologist Angie Lastman. Angie, millions of people are under a dangerous thunderstorm risk this evening, and we're not in the clear yet, right?
We sure aren't. We still have a couple more hours that we have the potential and really the ingredients that are all there to see some of these more dangerous, more severe storms developing along this line of thunderstorms that has been impacting a whole lot of people throughout the day today. We've got some improvements. We no longer have tornado watches, and we're starting to see some of those thunderstorm watches shrink, but that doesn't mean that the risk is over. We still have some communities that are going to see those continue at least until 10 p.m. for parts of Pennsylvania and Ohio. We saw that get extended. It shrunk down a little bit, but still nonetheless extended for a couple of hours. We see just to the south and east of Nashville and parts of Tennessee, there is a thunderstorm watch that's in effect until 10 p.m. there. And in parts of the south, including Jackson, Mississippi, we're going to continue to see a thunderstorm watch in effect there until 10 p.m. We have that risk that will last at least for another couple of hours. As this storm system continues to march to the east, it looks like we'll mostly be looking at the potential for some strong winds, maybe some hail. You showed some of the images of the hail that we've been dealing with over the past day or so from this system. We've also seen gusts of wind up to 78 miles per hour out of Louisville. So this storm system has a history of producing really strong winds, some large hail, and even some tornadoes. As we get into the evening hours tonight, we're also going to focus on to the southern portion of this system, where heavy rain will be what we turn our attention to as we transition into tomorrow, especially stretching from Memphis to Houston. That's where we could see a flooding concern. I'll show you those flood watches that are already in effect, but we're also going to watch the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast for the potential for some strong storms there. Now, the risk isn't quite as high as what it has been over the past couple of days in a lot of other spots. Nonetheless, though, we're still going to have to watch for some hail, some damaging winds, maybe a tornado or two. there's the flood watches that I mentioned. Nashville included in that, Tupelo. You look down towards Lufkin, also included in that, and that's because we could see anywhere from maybe 3 to 5 inches of rain on already super saturated grounds. That could be a problem. Localized amounts up to 6 inches. That means that we'll have to watch for that flooding concern here in the coming days. And we're not going to forget about the temperatures. If you are in D.C. tomorrow, I have a feeling you're going to walk outside and think, what happened? 83 degrees in Philadelphia, mid-80s for D.C. This extends down the East Coast. It doesn't stay like that, so just be prepared for it to kind of moderate out. But we'll start to see those warmer conditions stick with us for a little while longer, Gadi.
Such wild swings. I can't get over those numbers that we just talked about. 470 tornado reports in 2023 alone. What does that tell us about the tornado season so far?
Yeah, it tells us that we're off to a really active start, and we're in the top 3 for this date. So there's only 2 other years that have had this many tornado reports so far by this time. We're talking 25 states impacted by this. What I want you to notice is kind of where those are centered. The most of those reports are a little farther to the east than we normally see. Remember, Tornado Alley is a little farther to the west from where all these reports are. Still have seen some of those draped across that area, but there's been 25 states in the third most active year to date, and we are just getting into the worst part of the season. We're going to have a long haul here over the next couple of months as spring really ramps up and we start to see things getting in action there. We also have seen 63 tornado fatalities. That is close to our yearly average. So over the entire year, normally we get to about 71. We're nearing that, which is an unfortunate stat that we have here. But with all of these tornadoes that we've seen so far this year, no surprise there. We're going to have to continue to stay connected when it comes to keeping those warnings up to date and such here as we get through the next couple of months.
And not to mention how weird it is to see those tornadoes over there in California, in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Thank you, Angie. And imagine getting your house destroyed by a tornado, starting to rebuild, only to find yourself under a tornado threat yet again. That was the fear last night in Little Rock, Arkansas, where a massive twister flattened a community just last week. NBC's Morgan Chesky is there with more.
Yeah, Gadi, good evening. And another day, another dangerous dose of severe weather. We are here in Little Rock, but we are learning more about this tornado that struck very early this morning in southeastern Missouri, specifically Bollinger County, where unfortunately authorities have confirmed at least 5 people were killed in what's being described as a high-end EF2 tornado that struck sometime between 3:30 and 4 a.m. this morning. Under the cover of darkness, we know tornadoes are twice as deadly there. Damage estimates are still ongoing, but this is just part of a secondary system that is tearing its way through the south and making its way eastward. Here in Little Rock, meanwhile, a huge sigh of relief because a lot of folks here were thinking that they would be hit by potential tornadoes for the second time in less than a week. I'm standing in front of the remnants of an EF3 tornado that tore through here Friday afternoon. This storm left 1 person dead in Little Rock. We know that across this state, this storm system last Friday damaged more than 2,500 buildings. In fact, even here in Little Rock, it damaged a fire station that now has to have firefighters split up because it's a total loss, in addition to the homes and neighborhoods that are a total loss behind me. We do know that FEMA has established a significant presence here in Little Rock and elsewhere in Arkansas in those hard-hit areas, no doubt likely heading now to Missouri following this storm system that proved today it's far from over. Gadi.
Morgan Chesky, thank you. The fallout from former President Trump's historic arrest continues tonight, especially after that campaign-style speech he delivered last night at Mar-a-Lago, just hours after he was charged with 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. Trump defiantly attacked Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg and Judge Juan Merchan, who is overseeing the case, all while lashing out at other open investigations.
Everybody said this is not really an indictment. There's nothing here. The criminal is the district attorney because he illegally leaked massive amounts of grand jury information. I have a Trump-hating judge with a Trump-hating wife and family whose daughter worked for Kamala Harris.
Meanwhile, the strength of the Manhattan DA's case is under a whole lot of scrutiny. Some legal experts, and these are vocal Trump critics, are calling it weak. Others are going so far as to call the indictment a mistake. Meanwhile, top House Republicans are charting a path forward to investigate Alvin Bragg and his office as well, all while Trump's 2024 presidential campaign is capitalizing on all those headlines and raising massive amounts of campaign cash. NBC News correspondent Dasha Burns joins me now. Dasha, what's the reaction to Trump's speech been from both sides of the aisle?
Well, Gadi, the reaction today has been a combination of reaction to the speech itself and also what the speech is talking about, which is the indictment and those charges that have finally been unsealed. We finally had to take a look at those 34 counts. And look, I've been talking to folks on the Democratic side, on the Republican side, folks in that middle that we're always looking at. And there is a lot of confusion, frustration across the board here. What the last 24 to 48 hours have really done, Gadi, is sort of solidified and cemented the support and the power that Trump holds within the Republican Party right now, whether you are a Trump supporter or whether you are someone in the Republican Party that has maybe perhaps wanted to move away from former President Trump, maybe wanted to steer voters towards another option like a DeSantis or a Haley or a Pence. Those doors seem to be closing and closing fast. That is what I'm hearing from the Republican operatives that I have been talking to, essentially telling me that right now there is not an anti-Trump lane. There is not a position in the Republican Party you can hold that is against Trump and against and for this indictment, Gadi.
And what do we know about when Trump will be in court next, and how much of this is going to overlap with the campaign calendar?
It's going to be pretty uncanny timing. So the next time he's expected to be in court is in early December. That is, of course, right smack dab in the heat of the primary season, in the lead up to those critical primaries. That's going to very likely, from the folks that I've been talking to, give him a big boost going into Iowa, going into New Hampshire. So for the Trump campaign, they're not necessarily upset about that timeline there, Gadi.
They're not necessarily upset about the timeline, and yet they're also raising an insane amount of campaign cash. What's the tally at now?
Yeah. The tally, according to the campaign, they told me today, they are now at $12 million since the news of the indictment became public. They say about a third of that is new donations, folks that have not donated to that campaign in the past. They also say they've got about 25,000 volunteers who have signed up. So they're really touting this as an example of the former president's strength politically right now. And look, these aren't numbers that we can verify independently right now because we haven't been able to look at the FEC data yet. But if these are any indication, that's significant, and that really is going to be tough for some of these other campaigns and potential campaigns that are trying to challenge Trump in the primary to swallow, looking at the strength that this indictment is giving him, really galvanizing not just those Republicans on the Hill, the operatives, the allies, but also, if these numbers are to be believed, the grassroots too, Gadi.
Quite the head start from a criminal case. Dasha, thank you so much. And prosecutors in this case have been very open about their concerns over what Trump could say outside of the courthouse. And there's been a lot of talk about whether we could see a gag order or a protective order in this case. But so far, none has been ordered, all while the Trump legal team has been defiant, defending his words and attacks. NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos joins me now. Danny, let's start with this whole attack on the judge's family. We heard that clip from Trump talking about the judge's daughter, the judge's wife. Here's how Trump lawyer Joe Tacopina responded a little bit earlier today.
It's not an attack on the judge or certainly his family. No one is suggesting that anything should happen to the judge or his family. And President Trump's comments did not in any way, shape, or form incite violence against the judge or anyone else.
So, Danny, is it an attack or is it political protected speech?
It's protected speech, and it's probably an attack at the same time, because attack is a pretty big tent. It can mean a lot of things. If it's something that constitutes a threat, you better believe the Manhattan DA will go out and prosecute Trump with a new crime if he's committing new crimes in the form of threats. So the Manhattan DA will be all over that. We don't need to worry too much about if Trump crosses the line into a threat. The real question is he improperly influencing his trial? That could land him back in front of the judge for sanctions, not because he's talking about his family and crossing a line he shouldn't, but because he could be influencing his own right to a fair trial. And I think the judge took the right path, which was, instead of dealing with the thorny First Amendment issues of a gag order, he instead admonished the parties, warned them of their obligations, and set what he thought would be the standard for good behavior. Now, if Trump violates that, that's on him. But at least the judge has set a baseline without wading into gag orders, protective orders, and the First Amendment and political speech.
And Danny, we should point out that the judge has received some threats, about a dozen or so threats so far. Will that play into what we see in court after what we heard from the former president?
This is a recurring theme with Donald Trump. If Donald Trump states his opinion that, hey, this judge is against me, if you or I did that, no one would really care. Maybe someone would tweet about it. That would be it. The problem we have is that the former president, if he criticizes anyone, there are people out there who take matters apparently into their own hands. You could argue that January 6th was an example of that. Even if Donald Trump argues, I didn't do anything in my words to incite a riot, even if that's technically true, we know now that people hear him speak, they get riled up, and they do some pretty dumb things. So we're in this difficult situation with the one person maybe in American history who can criticize someone like a judge and then have a bunch of minions do some really, really stupid things because they think for some reason that's what he wants them to do. So, look, this is something not only this judge has probably never dealt with, it's something no judge has ever really dealt with, how to keep control of a courtroom when so much happening outside of the courtroom can affect what happens in the courtroom. That just doesn't happen with your regular run-of-the-mill case, even a high-profile run-of-the-mill case.
And Danny, we've now had the facts of the case. We've now had the indictment for over 24 hours, and you've got your phone, which is probably connected to, I can't even count how many text chains about this. The perceived weakness of the DA's case. What are your thoughts? What's the weakest link there, and what would be the strongest?
The strongest is New York has very favorable language in its statute that gives the DA a path to conviction. In other words, for example, the intent to defraud required by the statute doesn't even require a victim. You don't need to show that anybody had money stolen from them by a fraudulent statement. So I think the path to misdemeanor land, at least, is a good one for the DA. Now, that's not what they want. They want the felonies. So if they rely on New York state law and they've used the pleading rules to their advantage and not locked themselves into a specific statute because they don't have to. On the other hand, the weakness, really the biggest weaknesses, and there are a few, the biggest one to me is it's hard to explain this case to a jury, to everybody. It's not clear cut. You have to go through the legal theory. And I find myself struggling with explaining it in a minute or two, which is why I'm already running out of time before I can finish explaining it. That is my Exhibit A, is my own lack of time. Yes, control room, I'm wrapping up, I promise.
Wrapping up, and I was just about to ask you if you had to sum it up in, I don't know, 20, 30 seconds. Stormy Daniels now having to pay the former president $100,000 or more in legal fees. How is that going to impact this case?
I mean, any of this stuff happening outside of the courtroom can impact this case because it's going to affect jurors. I mean, everybody is paying attention to what's going on. So as a defense attorney, all I'm really concerned about now at this stage, as we move towards trial, is what kind of outside conduct influence will make a difference on this jury pool. I mean, we may see a motion to change venue. I don't think it's likely, if for no other reason than these motions are almost never granted. But if there ever was a high-profile case that is out of the norm, it's this one. It's the most momentous case, at least for now, in the history of American criminal law, arguably. I mean, maybe more people watched OJ or something. I doubt it. I think this is it. So we're in new ground here. Could Trump get a venue change to another county? If that motion was granted, where would you send it? Do you send it to the Bronx, where people, according to voting, like Trump even less? Or do you send it to Richmond County, Staten Island, where I think if that happened, Trump wins?
NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos, on behalf of both Danny and I, sorry, control room. Danny's answers are just so interesting. Thanks for the extra time, Danny. Good to see you. And you could call the scene outside the courthouse yesterday a circus, but if you looked closely within the chaos, you would see an unlikely pair, a bride and a groom. WNBC's Adam Harding has more.
We thought that to some extent it was a funny situation, and we didn't hate the story that would come out of it.
Chandler Dean and his bride Carolina Trevino can laugh about it now. The high school sweethearts say they tied the knot Tuesday afternoon at the city clerk's office in Lower Manhattan. The couple saying "I do" only feet from where the former president was saying "not guilty."
We just took it in stride and saw a lot of humor in it.
Yeah, it was definitely chaotic, but not so much so that we couldn't get in.
So how close are we talking? Well, this right here is where the office of the city clerk is here in Lower Manhattan. Just go right down the street, turn the corner right here. This is where the former president made his first court appearance. There was a sea of protesters and a whole lot of cameras.
We finished the ceremony, and right as we walked out, someone said, "Trump just got out. Trump just got out."
The two say they didn't plan for this, of course. They made their appointment back in March. They'll host a larger ceremony later this month in their home state of Texas.
We wanted to do the legal ceremony here in what we thought might be a more intimate and low-key circumstance.
But as we all know, this location, this moment in history, was anything but intimate or low-key.
I was a little nervous.
Short of a security scare amid the clashing protesters, they simply did not want to reschedule their special day.
To us, it was a way that made the day a little bit more memorable.
And if anything, people were just I think delighted at the fact that despite the chaos, love continues on.
Yeah, who cares? It's New York. There's something happening here every day.
Love continues on. WNBC's Adam Harding, thanks. And still ahead this hour, a murder in San Francisco is rippling through Silicon Valley. Then more on the international handshake having China threaten retaliation against the United States. And later, the Los Angeles Metro is using a controversial tactic to clear homeless people from stations. It's extremely loud classical music. Take a listen. Police in San Francisco are trying to solve the murder of a high-profile tech executive who was stabbed yesterday. The case is now sending shockwaves through the tech industry. NBC's Miguel Almaguer has more.
When San Francisco police arrived at the crime scene, Bob Lee, the high-profile tech executive, had been stabbed multiple times. The 43-year-old rushed to a hospital where he died. The brutal attack near the shadow of the Bay Bridge at 2:35 a.m. Tuesday unfolded near surveillance cameras. Tonight, friends in shock with no suspects in custody and no apparent motive for the murder.
It's going to be hard to imagine a world where you can't call Bob and say, "Hey, I have this problem I'm thinking through. Can you help me through it?"
Lee, a father of two who had recently moved to Miami, was a tech giant.
We're aiming to lift the entire world into a new era of financial freedom.
The chief product officer of MobileCoin, the 43-year-old helped create Android, but was perhaps best known for starting Cash App, now run by Twitter founder Jack Dorsey, who called the death heartbreaking.
I have heard from a lot of people who I represent in this neighborhood. They have expressed their concerns about some of the public safety challenges they're facing.
Lee had lived in San Francisco for years and had been visiting on the day he was murdered.
Amid the flood of condolences on social media, Elon Musk, a vocal critic of San Francisco policies, writing, "Many people I know have been severely assaulted. Violent crime in SF is horrific. With the city's murder rate climbing in recent years, robberies, thefts, and assaults are also up, amid reports of an exodus as homelessness and the cost of living skyrocket. Now, another high-profile crime, the unsolved murder of a tech titan." Miguel Almaguer, NBC News.
And here in California today, we saw a meeting that might have just ratcheted up tensions between the U.S. and China even higher. Today, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy met with the Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. Now, this is the first time a Taiwanese president met with the U.S. Speaker on American soil, and it's being seen by China as a massive affront to their insistence that Taiwan is not a sovereign country. Speaker McCarthy and President Ing-wen boasting about the strong alliance between the two nations and their mutual commitment to democracy. Take a look.
The people of Taiwan and America is a matter of profound importance to the free world, and it is critical to maintain economic freedom, peace, and regional stability.
In our efforts to protect our way of life, Taiwan is grateful to have the United States of America by our side.
But while the two of them were all smiles, Chinese officials called the meeting a provocation and are vowing to, quote, fight back. NBC's Aaron McLaughlin joins us now from Simi Valley, California. Aaron, let's start with the meeting itself. How did this come about? What do they talk about?
Hey, Gadi. Well, this meeting happened at the invitation of House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. A lot of emphasis has been placed on the bipartisan nature of today's meeting. It included 18 lawmakers in total, a congressional delegation, 12 Republicans, 6 Democrats. During the press conference, Speaker McCarthy saying that based on today's conversations, he sees 3 main areas of action, including continued arms sales to Taiwan, economic cooperation, as well as an emphasis on shared values. We also heard from President Tsai. She thanked Speaker McCarthy for the warm welcome and said this kind of support makes Taiwan feel less isolated as it's been coming under increased pressure from China. Gadi.
And Aaron, we've heard the provocation talk before, but when you hear China saying they could fight back, what do they mean by that?
Well, we don't know, and all eyes will be on China after this meeting to see what sort of response they come up with. We all remember what happened last August when then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taipei. It triggered Beijing to respond with these massive military exercises that were unprecedented around and over the island of Taiwan. Now, analysts do not believe that this meeting today will provoke that scale of response, noting that French President Emmanuel Macron has just arrived in Beijing for meetings with the Chinese leadership. So they see it as unlikely that Beijing would take that kind of action during that visit, but they'll be watching the situation very closely going forward. Gadi.
Aaron McLaughlin, thanks so much. And coming up, results in a statewide race could shape the 2024 election. We're going to explain how one Supreme Court seat in Wisconsin has the country watching. But first, you got to see this. With Easter just a few days away, the London Zoo has come up with an excellent way to include everyone in the fun. Animals like tigers, meerkats, even squirrel monkeys enjoyed their very own specialized Easter egg hunts. And while zoo visitors got to soak up all that cuteness, the animals were able to brush up on their foraging and hunting skills. We'll be right back. And it's time now for some of the other headlines we're watching tonight. Chicago has a new mayor. In a major victory for progressives, Brandon Johnson defeated his more moderate challenger last night, a union organizer and former teacher. He is succeeding Lori Lightfoot, who failed to win her re-election just over a month ago. In a crackdown on child labor, 2 senators have sent letters to 27 CEOs demanding that their companies comply with child labor laws. And that's got some big names attached to it, too, like General Mills, J.Crew, and Target. And this comes as the Department of Labor finds a 69% increase in the number of children found to be employed in violation of those labor laws. And across the country, thousands of students walked out of school today to demand gun control. Now, this comes 1 week after that horrific shooting at a Nashville elementary school. And here's what one student had to say in Tampa.
I know I'm not the only one who's tired of this happening, and I also know I'm not the only one who's tired of saying that. This generation, my generation, our generation has grown up in a pandemic of gun violence, and it is killing us.
And England's got a new queen. The invitations for King Charles's coronation are out. Now, if that sounds a little confusing, just know it is a lot of pomp and circumstance for the title change of Camilla, who has been long called the Queen Consort, shall now just be called Queen Camilla. And in Louisiana, it was a parade of champions for the LSU women's basketball team. The hometown heroes were celebrated just about an hour ago after winning the national championship on Sunday. It was their first NCAA women's basketball title. Let's turn to a mysterious case out of Florida. Authorities there are saying that the murders of 3 teens in 3 separate incidents are all connected. The murders happened between March 30th and April 1st, and deputies say the victims all knew each other. While the motive still remains pretty unclear, officials have hinted on the involvement of what they are calling hybrid gangs. From our NBC affiliate in Orlando, reporter Michelle Meredith reports.
On Monday, crime scene techs from the Marion County Sheriff's Office were working overtime in the Ocala National Forest, working to find out how 3 teenagers turned up dead or barely alive in 3 consecutive days.
As a parent, every parent should feel the same way I do, just completely in shock.
It started Thursday night when a 16-year-old girl was found on the side of the road near Forest Lakes Park. She had been shot, but survived.
Yeah, right now, the condition of the surviving victim is very grave, and so we've whether detectives have been able to speak to her or not, I can't speak to that.
Friday morning, just around the corner, the body of another teenager was found on the side of the road, shot. He did not survive. Then Saturday, a grisly scene was discovered at a pond in the Ocala National Forest. In a car, partially submerged in the water, was the body of a teenage girl who had been shot to death. Now, investigators now tell us they believe that these cases are related. They say that the victims are all teenagers, all about the same age, and number 2, that they were targeted. This was not random.
The assumption is this is connected some way, somehow, and right now trying to determine what exactly that is.
Meanwhile, parents whose kids went to school with some of the victims are heartbroken.
I just hope we can figure out what went wrong and help to make this a better community so that our kids do feel safe.
In Marion County, Michelle Meredith, WESH 2 News.
It was a mass shooting that happened in 2017 that family members of the victims say should have been prevented by the federal government, specifically the Air Force. And today, the Justice Department seems to agree, saying it will pay nearly $145 million in a settlement to the victims. NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian has more. Ken, 2017, I vividly remember covering that shooting at the church in Sutherland Springs, Texas. 26 people were killed, 22 people were hurt. Both family members of the victims and survivors of that shooting are involved in this case, right? Is the settlement what they were hoping for?
Well, look, they had a ruling from a federal judge awarding them $230 million, Gadi, but the Justice Department appealed that ruling, and this settlement is the result. It's probably the best they could do. It's one of the largest, if not the largest, of several settlements the government has had to make in cases where they've been accused, different agencies have been accused of negligence in a mass shooting. And in this case, you know how horrific that shooting was, and it was all the more horrific when we learned that this shooter had several arrests for domestic violence and 1 conviction, all of which should have been reported into that database for firearm background checks, but were not. And a DOD investigation found that the Air Force actually had 6 occasions where they should have flagged this guy to make sure that he never could have purchased a firearm, and for bureaucratic and incompetent reasons failed to do so. That investigation said that it was inexcusable. So this lawsuit was really about whether the government owed money, and at the end of the day, the Justice Department decided that they would settle it without admitting wrongdoing. But what these families also hope is that the Biden administration makes sure that people are following the rules when it comes to submitting information into this background check database, Gadi.
Ken, do you think that this is going to lead to any changes when it comes to gun background checks?
So it already has, in the sense that the Air Force went back and scrubbed their records after this and tried to make sure that there were no people who had slipped through the cracks. But when you read that Inspector General investigation, it really paints a picture of a government bureaucracy where people don't know the rules and they're not paying close attention to when they have to report individuals into this database. And it just feels to me like there could be a lot more attention paid to this. It's a very important issue. We do not want people with domestic violence convictions or other violent convictions to be able to legally purchase high-powered weapons, Gadi.
And I mean, it sounds like a lot of money, over $100 million, but how many victims, how many survivors, how many family members are we talking here?
It's 75 plaintiffs, and you know how this works, Gadi. Generally, the lawyers take a third, and there's taxes. And look, it's, you know, I'm sure they would say it's not about the money for them. The money is really a symbol that the government had to pay a price here, and hopefully this will get the attention of the government to try to fix this problem to make sure it never happens again.
Let's hope that happened. Ken Delanian, thanks so much.
You bet.
And for the first time in 15 years, liberals have taken control of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Liberal-leaning Judge Janet Protasiewicz defeated conservative Daniel Kelly in a race that has flipped the balance of power. Now, that race is nonpartisan, but the party support is clear, and that is huge because the court could take up key issues like abortion and redistricting that other states are going to be closely watching. But this race was bitter till the very end. NBC's Shaq Brewster has more from Milwaukee.
Good afternoon. Well, this is a race that people from all across the country were having their eyes on and paying close attention to. And in the end, it resulted in liberal judge Janet Protasiewicz beating former conservative Justice Daniel Kelly in a pretty lopsided fashion. This is a race that people were paying close attention to because of the national implications here. This is a court that has been at the center of pretty controversial rulings, from striking down COVID restrictions to setting election rules here in this battleground state. And I want you to listen to a little bit of what we heard from the candidates last night.
I wish that in a circumstance like this, I would be able to concede to a worthy opponent. But I do not have a worthy opponent to which I can concede.
Our state is taking a step forward to a better and brighter future where our rights and freedoms will be protected. And while there is still work to be done, tonight we celebrate this historic victory.
One of the main issues in this race, when you talk to voters, when you watch those campaign ads, is the issue of abortion. Wisconsin is a state where there's a near total ban on the procedure because of an 1849 law that went into effect after the overturning of Roe. One thing that we heard throughout the campaign from Judge Protasiewicz was that while she wouldn't prejudge any case that will come before her, she said she wanted to share her values with Wisconsinites, one of those being a woman's right to choose. We can expect that issue and so many others to come before this court in the next term. Back to you.
Thanks, Shaq. Coming up on the future of everything, not everything you read on the internet is true. I know, shocking, right? Well, we've got a report on a group trying to correct the record, especially when it comes to gender gaps. And later, it is all about Oliver, the story of a community rallying around a little boy battling cancer. And he sounds pretty awesome, if you ask me. Take a listen.
A really good friend. He's a funny friend, too. Yeah, and a playful friend.
All right, pop quiz time. How many times has the United States won the FIFA World Cup? Well, according to some internet search engines, the answer is 0, but that is the wrong answer. For the U.S. men's, it's 0, but for the U.S. women, they have won 4 times. So imagine being on the women's team, looking up how many times the U.S. has won and seeing 0. And it's that kind of gender bias on the internet one group wants to correct. An NBC LX News storyteller Ngozi Keldo explains.
Correct the Internet aims to give that correct information when it comes to the discrepancies between female and male sports athletes and their accolades, and especially how we see them on search engines.
This is an unconscious bias that occurs across all sectors of society. We chose to focus on women's sports and sportswomen because it's so black and white when it comes to stats. If you ask a non-gendered question, you should get a non-gendered response.
Rebecca Souden herself was a former star athlete on the pro level and at the college level. And so the New Zealand native aimed to correct the internet herself with this new campaign and movement.
We launched it in the halftime of the USA women's soccer game versus New Zealand. We've been about 2 months and it's just gone gangbusters, really. We've had supports from organisations like the United Nations. Personal highlight was seeing that sports equality champion Billie Jean King sharing and saying it was her new favourite campaign. Alex Morgan, who has been at the forefront of progress and gender equality, commenting on the campaign in the news.
How does Correct the Internet work?
We've created a simple tool online at correcttheinternet.com where anyone can go out there and simply jump on our website and pick one of the 30 or so statistics we've identified to be incorrect, or better still, submit your own from your favourite player or sport. We'll add that to the list. Follow a few easy steps and you can click, 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 and then that will actually send feedback to these search engines so it can actually get submitted to these engineers and them look at the problem and work to fix it. We as people have created this problem. It's actually not the tech companies. They're just delivering what they think we want to be served, but it's us as people who have written this inherent bias into the algorithms. We can, as people, take the power back and rewrite these algorithms without our bias in it. So head on to Correct the Internet and get correcting.
Ngozi Keldo reporting. Thanks so much. Is classical music the answer to making the public safer? The Metro here in Los Angeles thinks it could help. And if you head out to catch a train, you might hear this. All right, not too bad, but imagine that on a loop over and over again and extremely loud. It could get annoying, which is actually the goal. In a statement to the LA Times, a Metro official said that the music is being used to, quote, restore safety and create an atmosphere appropriate for spending short periods of time. The tactic has been used elsewhere in California and other places as well. In fact, 7-Eleven has used classical music outside LA area stores to prevent loitering since 2019. And businesses in other cities like Seattle, Austin, and Philadelphia have all used similar methods. NBC's Rahima Ellis joins us now. Rahima, is there any proof that this works from a public safety point of view?
Well, officials do say that they think there is some efficacy to this program, and they point to some impressive numbers, if you will. I want you to take a look at some of these numbers. They say that crime is down 20%. Emergency calls are down something like 75%, and there's less graffiti and vandalism. And so for them, for public officials, they say that points to a win for this 6-month program, and this is only in the first month when they took these numbers about crime going down, Gadi.
And Rahima, there are some people who say this is the wrong approach. They say it's mean. It targets folks who are homeless. What's been the feedback here in L.A.?
You're right. It's not necessarily a program that everybody thinks is a good idea. They think it, for one thing, makes people upset about classical music. But listen to what some people in the system, in the metro station, were saying. Take a listen.
That's wild that classical music is really the tactic they're using.
It's a bit dramatic, but overall it's fine.
I think if they don't want them in the streets, they're not allowed down here. Where are they allowed to go?
And that's been a familiar criticism that this may be moving homeless people from the metro station, but it's not solving the problem of homelessness. And some officials may say that's not what they were aiming for on with this particular program. They were trying to create more safety within the metro station. And as you can hear, there's some controversy as to whether it's the right approach or the wrong approach. Gadi?
Rahima Ellis, thanks so much. And before we go, a report on violence in Jerusalem during one of the holiest times for that region, and more on the groundbreaking world leader who is now stepping down because of burnout.
I've always believed this to be a place where you can make a difference. I leave knowing that to be true.
And for the second time today, Israeli police have stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. Police raided early this morning and once again this evening. Our producer on the ground said that they could hear screaming and rubber bullets being shot. At least 6 people have been hurt. NBC News foreign correspondent Raf Sanchez reports from Jerusalem.
Gadi, twice in the last 24 hours, we have seen Israeli forces storming into the Al-Aqsa Mosque complex behind me. The first time was at dawn, the second time after sunset and the evening prayers. And remember, this is the third holiest site in Islam, which is why it has been so shocking to Palestinians here, but also to many Muslims around the world, seeing these images of Israeli police in riot gear, hitting people with nightsticks, hitting them with their guns, firing rubber-coated bullets. Now, Israeli police tell us they feel they had no choice but to go into the mosque because Palestinian extremists had barricaded themselves inside, were stockpiling improvised weapons like rocks, like fireworks. We did see Palestinians shooting fireworks inside the mosque earlier this morning. But what Palestinians have been telling us is this is not about extremists turning the mosque into a fortress. This is about ordinary worshippers who have a Ramadan tradition of sleeping in the mosque during this holy month. Remember, Gadi, we are only one night into Passover. We still have 2 weeks of Ramadan to go. So anyone who thought that we were going to get through this period of coinciding holy events quietly has another thing coming. Now, there has been a wave of condemnation of Israel's actions from neighboring Arab states, including the Jordanians, who administer the site here, and also the UAE, which is one of the Arab countries that Israel made peace with under Donald Trump. Prime Minister Netanyahu also under a lot of pressure from the far right of his own government to crack down on Palestinians, both here in Jerusalem, but also in Gaza, where we saw the Hamas militant group shooting rockets earlier in the day in response to what happened here in Jerusalem. Hamas wants to present itself to the Palestinian people as kind of the defender of this holy place. And so they are prepared to make an issue in Gaza what is going on here in Jerusalem. So a very tense period here in Jerusalem and a tense time of year. Gadi.
And today, a political powerhouse said goodbye to her life in leadership. New Zealand's Jacinda Ardern officially quit Parliament today with a final address. Here's NBC's Molly Hunter with her story.
Jacinda Ardern never thought she'd make it here. Wearing a korowai, a Maori feather cloak today, she bid farewell to Parliament.
I've always believed this to be a place where you can make a difference. I leave knowing that to be true.
Taking stock of her time in office.
A domestic terror attack, a volcanic eruption, a pandemic.
The terror attack in Christchurch humbled her, she said, and she will now work to combat violent extremism. At just 37 years old, she was New Zealand's second youngest leader in more than 150 years. She was the second world leader after Pakistan's Benazir Bhutto to become a mother in office, making headlines when she brought her 3-month-old daughter to the UN General Assembly. But today was about gratitude, about imploring her colleagues to do more on climate change, and most powerfully, about leaving the door firmly open.
You can be anxious, sensitive, kind, and wear your heart on your sleeve. You can be a mother or not. You can be a nerd, a crier, a hugger. You can be all of these things. And not only can you be here, you can lead just like me.
Setting a legacy she hopes will be followed. Molly Hunter, NBC News.
Molly, thank you. And finally tonight, a story that is giving all of the feels. It's about a little boy named Oliver and the community that is rallying around him as he fights cancer. Andrew McClung from our NBC affiliate WCYB has more from Gate City, Virginia.
As the bell rings to start the day at Shoemaker Elementary School, students in Betsy Seaver's kindergarten class are missing one of their best friends.
He's a kind student.
A really good friend. He's a funny friend, too. Yeah, and a playful friend.
His name is Oliver Hensley, and he's just 5 years old.
Well, he's very outgoing. He is shy a lot, but once you get to know him, he's just all smiles.
His mom, Kayla, says there's never a frown on his face, which has helped her and her family through some recent hard news. She says Oliver's jaw puffed up out of nowhere, and he was taken to the doctor.
And he said, I think that it's a tumor.
Oliver then went to Niswonger Children's Hospital and then St. Jude.
The last result that we got was from his first biopsy, and they told us that it was cancer. It's the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. I wish that I could take it away, that it was me and not him.
The news sending shockwaves through the school.
It was devastating to hear it, and to know that there was nothing I could do as his teacher.
But Betsy did figure out something they could do. The school hosted a parade for Oliver Tuesday before he goes back to St. Jude for more treatment.
I was so shocked. I'm blessed and grateful.
Oliver got to ride with the sheriff as the school cheered him on.
He is so strong, he is so brave, he is so loved, and he is our inspiration.
We're really blessed to have everybody that's helped us.
And we love you too, Oliver. We're praying for you. That does it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. We'll see you tomorrow, but until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.